Court. The Supreme Court of India, being the highest court in the country, has to perform many judicial, administrative, advisory and other functions. Judicial Functions. The judicial functions of the Supreme Court are both of the original as well as of appellate nature. Original Jurisdiction. Original jurisdiction means the authority to hear certain cases for the first time. The Supreme Court of India has original jurisdiction over certain cases listed. Interpretation of the Constitution. All cases where interpretation of the Constitution is required can be directly filed in the Supreme Court. Center-state disputes. All disputes between the centre and the states fall within the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Fundamental rights. Cases relating to infringement, abridging, or denying of the fundamental rights guaranteed by the Constitution can originally be brought before the Supreme Court. Disputes between two or more states. Disputes between two or more states also make a case for original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Appellate Jurisdiction. The Supreme Court has powers to grant special leave to appeal against the judgments delivered by any court in the country. The cases that can be brought before the Supreme Court through an appeal form the appellate jurisdiction of the court. They are as under. Criminal cases. A criminal suit where a person is acquitted by the Sessions Court but awarded capital punishment by the High Court can be brought on appeal to the Supreme Court. An appeal can be made to the Supreme Court when a High Court withdraws a criminal case from a lower court, convicts a person and awards capital punishment. A case where a High Court itself certifies that it involves a substantial point of law and calls for interpretation of the Constitution. Civil suits. Any civil suit where a High Court itself certifies that a substantial point of law is involved and interpretation of the Constitution is required. Constitutional matters. All matters irrespective of the nature where a certificate is issued by a High Court that it involves an important point of law and needs interpretation of the Constitution can be brought before the Supreme Court. Custodian of the Constitution. It is the duty of the Supreme Court to uphold the sanctity of the Constitution. It can review a central or state law to establish its legality or otherwise. If the Parliament passes any law that is against the Constitution, the Supreme Court can declare that law as unconstitutional. Guardian of the Fundamental Rights. The Supreme Court of India is the guardian of the fundamental rights of the citizens of India. It protects the fundamental rights from being eroded, abridged or infringed upon by any person, group of persons or the state itself. It can issue writs to the offending party or parties. Advisory functions. Another very important function of the Supreme Court of India is its obligation to advise on constitutional as well as other matters of law to any government department, legislature, the President or the Council of Ministers, whoever seeks it. Court of Record. The Supreme Court acts as the court of record also. All the decisions and decrees issued by the Supreme Court itself are duly printed and kept in record for future reference in the court, as well as for the use of lawyers in their pleadings. Important decisions by the high courts of the land are also kept in record for future reference by the Supreme Court.